Welcome to the Work Wonders podcast, where we simplify HR for small business. I'm Susan.
And I'm Angela. Let's dive into today's episode and answer what you've been wondering about.
Today's episode is all about superannuation. When to pay it, how to pay it, who to pay, and when not to pay. Angela's the expert here, so she'll be giving us all her best tips on super. So let's get started. This is the Work Wonders podcast.
Hi, Susan.
Angela, you're on the spot.
No problem. Well, I'm happy to share what I know about superannuation. There's lots to cover. I guess the first place to start is what is it that we're talking about?
Yeah.
So superannuation or superannuation guarantee is one of the requirements for employers to pay their employees, and in some cases subcontractors. I'll just point out here, go back to our episode where we talked about contractors versus employees. There's some information in there about super. But when it comes down to it, it's fundamentally just about paying superannuation over and on top of whatever you're paying in the payroll to somebody into their superannuation fund.
So how do you actually set that up? And when do you set it up, I guess?
Yeah. So it needs to be set up when you're starting out, when you obviously hire your first employee. That would be the optimum time to do it. But obviously for each new employee that you take on, you need to set up their details. It's something that needs to be paid at minimum quarterly. So you'd be looking at around January, April, July and October each year. And the way that you pay that, it does need to be compliant with the ATO's guidelines. They call it super stream compliant just because we need another, term to remember.
Yeah, exactly. And tell me, does it have, a three-letter acronym as well?
No, I don't think it does. But there are 3 ways that you can do it.
Okay.
So to achieve that, you can first of all use the ATO's clearinghouse. That's free to use that if you want to, but obviously that's super stream compliant. If you choose to use that, it's just simply logging into the ATO portal, yourself that you have as a business owner and using their facility. A clearinghouse is basically just a way to make one payment that goes out to everybody's individual superannuation funds without you having to do them all individually. If you don't want to use that ATO's system and you want to use it in-house of your own payroll system you're already using, for example, if you're using Xero or MYOB or any one of those, most of them do have their own clearinghouse involved there. So you could use that. So it's already in your payroll system. You're just doing a few more steps to get that same result of just the one transaction, and it pays everybody individually. That's also compliant to do it that way.
And so obviously you've got to then link to your bank account. So,
yes, you do.
Yeah.
The third option, though, if you don't want to use either of those, is you can go straight to your default superannuation fund, and you can actually use the clearinghouse within that superannuation fund, again, to use that same
Oh, I didn't realise that. So can you explain a bit more about what the default superannuation fund is?
Yeah, so this is probably something that I hear from small business owners a lot that go, I don't know what that is. I've never done that. I don't know why I need to do that. But if you think of the example of when you have a new employee, when they start with you, you're going to want to get a lot of key information from them, not just welcome them to the team, but also get the payroll information and so on. But you're also going to want their super fund details. So with your new employee, it's about giving them a super choice form, or there's a form called a super choice form. And that form just allows your employee to jot down what their choice is of where they want their superannuation to be paid. Now, there are some occasions where employers will go, well, I don't have one, or I don't know, or can you just set it up for me? And they'll say, I just want to use your super fund. And
right.
That's where a default super fund comes into it. So,
sorry, I'm just thinking, so that would often be the case if you're employing a lot of young people, such as in a retail environment or hospitality, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea is that as an employer, you just basically have a linkage with a particular super fund. So you might just choose the one that's relevant to your industry. It's up to you. There's a few steps to register, and that way you're set up. If you have any new employees that want to join that super fund, they can do it through you. So it would be having that opportunity there for any new employees to use it if they need to. They may not, but that's ideally what it's about.
Okay.
There is one more step though. So in that scenario with someone new that says, oh, look, I don't really have a super fund, or can I just use your default super fund? The government's added one more step for us before we can do that. And it's another term. It's now...
Oh, is this the pinned or pegged or something super?
Yeah, close. It's stapled super.
Oh, stapled.
So that's a relatively new one. It came in recently, last year, I think. The idea there is just that one more step to check whether an employee has a super fund somewhere out there before you go and add them to a new fund.
I just have this image of people walking around with this superannuation stapled
over
to
their
them.
head. So you go again through the ATO portal, and there's a couple of steps involved there just to do that check first to see if there's a super fund they're linked with somewhere at the universe there, and you'd use that first before you add them to your own default.
Okay.
Hi, Angela here. Payroll's complex, isn't it? There's so much to remember. And as your team grows, the more time-consuming payroll becomes for you. Well, whether you pay your staff weekly, fortnightly or monthly, my business Total Workforce Services can provide you with a simple solution, so all you need to do is make the bank transfer. Let us take care of the tricky stuff so you can be sure that your business is compliant. We will even help you stay on top of tax, super and workers' compensation obligations and changes to your reward. Let's have a chat about how we can help you. You can find my details over on the Work Wonders website, workwonderspodcast.com.au.
So we've got our new employee. We've decided what they're going to do about the super, where the super money is going to grow. How does that money then get to, you mentioned clearinghouse, but how do we make sure that we're compliant in terms of the percentages? And I think that's changed recently too in terms of who gets paid when, because there used to be a floor of $450 a month.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So 1 July there were a few changes with superannuation. So first of all, it did go up to 10.5% in Australia. So currently that's what we're paying. There was that 450 minimum. So until a person grossed more than 450 a month, you wouldn't actually pay super. But now that's gone. So it's starting from zero. And that also, the 450 minimum also came into play with people under 18. But that's no longer the case. So it's just paying super straight away. So firstly, it's about your payroll settings. So making sure that you're accruing the right superannuation, the right 10.5%. On different types of things that you might be paying someone in the payroll. That's your first step.
So what are you paying super on?
Well, salary and wages is the most obvious thing, but I've got a list here to share with you of things that you don't pay super on, and that's probably the easiest way to go about it.
Yeah, okay.
So
the exceptions to the rule.
Yeah, that's right. And you can just simply set this up in your payroll settings so that you're not capturing it for these types of things. So I'm talking about overtime, allowances like a kilometre reimbursement, like for mileage, for example, or any sort of reimbursement, say if you use petty cash reimbursements, that sort of thing, if someone buys, the milk and tea and biscuits, that sort of thing. If a person's on workers' compensation and they're fully incapacitated or not working at all, that's not eligible for superannuation either. If a person's on jury duty leave, that doesn't accrue super either. If someone is leaving your business and you're paying out any unused annual leave or long service leave, you don't pay super on that component. And also if you're paying out for unfair dismissal, that doesn't have super on it either.
No. Okay, so there's quite a lot. What about things like loadings, if you're the first aid officer?
Yep. So allowances where it's a duty allowance that would have superannuation on top of it, but allowances that aren't, like the kilometre one I said, where it's an expendable allowance, that one doesn't attract super.
Yep. Thanks, Angela. That was a lot of information actually and very condensed in a short little episode.
No problem.
So if that's raised any questions for you, I suggest you get in touch with Angela because I probably wouldn't be as helpful as she is.
Thanks for listening to the Work Wonders podcast. Hit the subscribe button now to never miss an episode. And if you've enjoyed today, we'd love you to tell your friends and leave us a review. What are you wondering about? Let us know over at our website, workwonderspodcast.com.au. See you in the next episode.